Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here in person, and those of you joining us online, we always appreciate you tuning in with us every week. We have been going over a book, actually, the last couple of weeks. We have the 4 Agreements. We haven't shown the book yet,
Right.
so this is actually great Toltec wisdom on the 4 agreements that can help you to live an impeccable life.
Who's Toltec?
This was written by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Okay.
And the book is called The 4 Agreements. He has other books that he's written to kind of expanding on this.
Oh, nice.
When this originally caught hold, which was a couple decades ago, I believe, it had really created quite a storm of excitement in the air, and people finding themselves quite a bit through it.
Well, when people can find a way to narrow down ways to advance yourself in ways that you hadn't really grasped before is always a really exciting thing.
Exactly, yes. And I know this was actually a required reading by my elder shaman when I first went through the program with her. And it has quite a lot of good things that just really make good common sense when you understand them.
They do. They break it down in a nice, simple way.
Exactly. And today we're talking about the 3rd agreement, which is don't make assumptions.
Assumptions. You know what they say about assuming?
Uh-oh.
They make something out of you and me. I probably shouldn't say that on this.
When you look at the word assume,
maybe we'll leave that
you can
alone.
Understand that. And so, but a lot of times, so often people make assumptions.
They do.
We often think that we assume everyone else thinks like we do,
Yep.
sees the world the way we do,
Yep.
hears things the way we hear, and feels the way we feel.
And we think that they associate the world in the same context, and one of that we just always forget that the trip that we've made through this life is so unique.
Yes.
And it's colored our point of view so dramatically that it's locked in, and yet we think that other people have all of those same experiences.
Exactly. And a lot of times we feel even like people would be motivated the way we are motivated as well.
That's true.
I think that causes a lot of problems in relationships. And that can be looked at a little bit more by the book that's all about love languages. That's a great way to see how different we all think from one another.
Yeah.
For some, motivation and the feeling of being loved may come from gifts. For someone else, it may be from compliments. For someone else, it may be encouragement. There are so many different ways that we hear the world, not just in our close relationships, but in all of our relationships in life.
And because basically we're made up of 2 things, the whole nature-nurture thing. We are born with certain wiring and certain drives and certain focuses that are just natural to us.
Yes.
Then you add that to the evolution of all of the relationships you're in, and the way you're raised, and the things you've seen and the things you've been through, and all of those things are colored by what you were born with.
Yes.
And so, it's so unique to each person.
It really is. And it's one of the beautiful things about how we can learn to see each other.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel like they aren't seen, they aren't heard, people don't understand them, and they're not sure why. Yet they can themselves continue to go through life assuming everyone is just like them.
Right.
And then they're not hearing or seeing the people around them.
Absolutely. The same way that they aren't feeling seen or heard.
Yes. And one of the fascinating things in shamanism, we always talk about dreaming your world into being, dreaming your world awake. So many people go through life as though they're moving through life in a dream. They're living, they're talking, they're breathing, but they're asleep the whole time they're doing it.
Yes.
And within the medicine ways, we always talk about learning to dream your dream awake, being present for it, being awake, choosing the things. And something that so often fascinates me when we talk about assumptions is the way sometimes people will only see what they want to see, hear what they want to hear, act like they know what they want to know, and disregard the rest. And even more fascinating is when people choose chaos as what they choose to see and
so
hear.
Often.
And they may feel like on an internal level that they want to feel safe, that they want to feel heard, they want good relationships. And yet all of their assumptions drive things in a direction of chaos. And feeling like maybe judging others and feeling like you're judged all the time because you're the one judging others.
Now, do you feel like the people that seem to literally start, and push chaos forwards, people that do that, do you think are they fulfilling something in themselves, do you feel like?
Yes, I think that they really are, because I think there's this longing for something. And of course, I think it's a longing for love at the very core of it. There might be other things.
Everything is about love.
Other things on top of it. But some people thrive on chaos, drama, and excitement. And I think whenever anyone tends to get bored, I think boredom is one of the most dangerous things in the world. It is dangerous on a political level. It is dangerous on a personal level.
Emotional.
It's dangerous on a business level.
Absolutely.
Boredom causes someone to look for how to stir the pot.
Change what doesn't need to be changed necessarily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think for people, sometimes when they thrive on that chaos, or oftentimes they will hate the word drama, but truly it's as though they thrive on drama.
Absolutely.
And it's that stimulation. They're wanting stimulation because they're not doing the internal work to discover, who am I?
Yeah.
What is my purpose? Why am I here? And I think when we are detached from understanding our purpose in life, our ditsume, our reason for being here, I think when we're detached from that, we're trying to find something to stimulate our soul. And if we look in all the wrong places, then we stir up so much chaos. And I think there's also truth to that phrase, misery loves company. Yeah. So if somebody is not happy in themselves, if somebody is feeling miserable, then they often, whether they consciously are aware or not, they're trying to stir the pot and bring people into that misery so they don't feel alone in it.
Yeah, and I think, I was going to say, I agree with all of that, but I also think there are times where they're raised in chaos.
Yes.
And that's their comfort zone.
Yes.
That they will go find that because, we're creatures of habit. And whatever we're used to, even to the degree of, if we're used to abusive relationships, if we're used to people ignoring us, if we're used to drama all day, every day, if we're used to being put down, we actually, unless we consciously choose to do other than that, we just react in the sense of wanting to go find that again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now I have to say, with the idea of the assumption, those reactions, those figuring out what it takes and where you're at, figuring out why do I make these choices, whether it's creating drama in your life, whether it's running from people you care about, whether it's, any of these things that we do, there's always that moment where you stop for a second and go, why do I do that?
Yes.
And the reason that we don't know why we do that is we make all of these assumptions about ourselves. We assume we've thought everything through. We assume we've actually sat and contemplated and made decisions on the choices that have taken us to where we're at in this moment. And we've done nothing of the sort.
Right. Yes.
We have never stopped and gone, do I actually like when I call someone over and I know there's going to be a fight, but I call them over anyway, and it seems like I almost want that fight? Do I realize I do that?
Right.
So if I don't realize I do that, why would I do that? And then you start to figure out, then you have to ask yourself all of these questions, which, yes, takes time, energy, focus, a lot of things.
It's an investment in yourself.
It is, but that's the only way to not move forwards on making horrible assumptions about yourself that are wrong.
Yes, so often we, as also with assumptions, we overestimate what we can do, or we underestimate what we can do.
Yes.
And those are huge assumptions we make about ourselves.
Yep.
I feel for people when sometimes they will lead with a phrase saying, well, I am late as I always am again. Or
As
I
always.
can't finish the tasks that I planned for today, as always
Because I always do this.
And you can feel the pain in those statements.
Yeah.
And when we have negative self-talk about ourselves, when we aren't giving ourselves that feedback of knowing we are good enough, knowing we are capable enough, it starts to eat away at what we attract to ourselves because we don't feel worthy of the good around us. It eats away at our ability to interact in a fully engaged way because we're trying to hide part of what we feel is insecure within ourselves. And we make these assumptions about others along the way that, of course, they're better. They're always on time. They're always completing things. They do it better than I. But those are all assumptions. We sometimes, I believe, assume that others feel great about themselves and we feel like an imposter.
Thinking that everybody, because they're smiling, they're happy.
Yes.
And because they're not just destroyed, that their life must be going fine.
Exactly. Those are huge assumptions that I believe are made on a daily basis quite often. And when we, as you said, when we pause, starting first with ourselves, because that's really what it all comes down to. When we learn to stop making assumptions about ourselves, guess what? That then helps us to stop making assumptions about others.
Yeah, absolutely. With the assumptions about yourself, one of the things that I find so interesting is that the assumptions, like you said, the over and under, we both, usually a lot of times if we're actually good at something, we assume we're less capable. And if we're not that great at something, we assume we're more capable.
Isn't that interesting?
So, I mean, it's always like we're trying to emotionally compensate. When being good at something, you don't have to compensate because you're good at it, ideally. I mean, you wouldn't think, but people do that.
Yes.
And then when you're under, being not good at something is fine.
It's okay.
I mean, none of us are great at everything. And so you shouldn't shoot for hopefully mediocre, like emotionally, hopefully mediocre across the board. Find what you're good at. Learn, figure it out, figure what your limits are, and do the opposite do the same with the opposite, the things you're not great at. If I'm not great at it, to what degree? I mean, am I really, really not good at it? Because then you stay away from it possibly.
Right.
But if you may find out, oh, wow, I'm a lot better than I thought. But I was afraid to find out.
Yes, and I see that sometimes with business owners, a lot of times with entrepreneurs and people entering even into corporate sometimes. They feel like they have to be impeccable at everything.
Right.
They feel like the whole thing is all on them.
Marketing, major decisions, things about the building, things about inventory, like everything.
Everything.
Yes.
And when they learn to start taking a step back and looking at what am I good at?
Yeah.
What do I enjoy doing? Where is my time best spent? And then look at what are my weak points? What do I wish I was good at, but I'm really not good at? What things do I really not want to do that are time wasters because I could delegate them?
To people that are actually good at them.
Yes, and then even paying out for those things is a way that when you start recognizing what is your time worth, how do you value yourself, including your time? Because we have, I believe it's about 604,000 seconds in a week. That is a finite number of seconds.
Yeah, but that's a lot.
It goes really fast.
It does go fast. Sounds like a lot, though.
It sounds like a lot, and yet each minute goes by so quickly.
Yeah, now I'm just going to kick back. I got time.
And so recognizing what do you want to delegate. And this also can help your relationships. If you're in a relationship, especially an intimate relationship with somebody, then quite likely there are some things you're really good at and some things your spouse is much better at.
Right.
And when you can start to acknowledge that instead of competing with each other and instead saying, you know what, you're amazing at this and I appreciate it so much when you do this. And also recognizing if they seem like they're struggling with something, then jumping in and saying, you know what, why don't I take that off your plate? Because I can kick that out a bit faster, or I would be happy to do that part. And you learn to work as a team. And in that, you start lifting each other up. It's important if you start doing that to not make assumptions about what the other person is good
Right.
at or what they enjoy.
Yes.
And instead, what is one of the best ways to find out how to stop making assumptions?
Communication every
Communication.
time. Every
Ask
time.
questions.
Well,
Exactly.
and share.
What you think.
Yeah, by the way, I always do this and I do it with a smile, but I actually really don't like doing this.
Right.
You know, I'm actually decent at it, but I don't enjoy it.
Are you saying you don't like doing the dishes?
I'm saying I always do the dishes and I don't complain about it and I hate doing the dishes.
So maybe if I did it once a week, that might feel nice for you.
That would be amazing for me because
Amazing.
yes, then we can find other things that maybe I can do for you that offsets that.
Having that good open communication and not being afraid to ask questions.
Absolutely.
And so often I think in relationships we want to assume the other person can assume what we're thinking.
Yes, so
we
they-
think, well,
yep.
if they love me enough, they should automatically know what I want and what I'm thinking. And if we've been together for 20 years or goodness, for 3 years even, oftentimes people think,
Yes.
then they should certainly know what I
course.
want and what I like.
Yes.
And it's not true.
If they care about me, they'll know.
So do you want to dig your heels in and feel like you're in the right of saying they don't care enough, they obviously aren't
don't
paying
know.
attention, otherwise they would know or they would show.
Absolutely.
Do you want to dig your heels in and be unhappy with
Yes.
that? Or do you want to take the initiative and have a conversation and say, hey, look, honey, there's some things I'd like to talk to you about. Do you mind if I have a few minutes and I share some things that I've been thinking about? And I'd like you to share too. And then you can both find a path to happiness.
Yeah, that sounds scary.
It
I'll just
does
dig
sound
my heel
scary.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
I've done it my whole life. Why should I change now?
and doing it in a way sometimes, and I think that's a really good point because
Yes.
I think a lot of times in relationships, if you don't already have that open door
Yeah.
of communication,
Which I don't.
it can feel really
I
scary.
know for a fact that so many people
Yes.
don't have.
And it's so scary to initiate,
Yes.
and it's even scarier if you're the one that somebody's saying, I want to talk.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
just
what'd I
as,
do?
the only time, a perfect example, the only time that you know everything, the wheels are coming off and everything's going bad is when they go, when you have a minute, can we sit and talk? I have something I really need to talk to you about. And you just go,
Freeze.
my world is over. That's it.
We see that so often.
It's absolutely.
It is not uncommon.
You
If
don't sit down and talk. It's a good thing, man.
If you feel like you're alone in that,
Yes.
know that you're not
No,
alone.
no.
And know that there's a path out.
Yep.
And it might be setting up, making it so that it's a little bit easy. Maybe before you start the conversation, you take a few breaths, you let yourself get calm.
Yes.
And paying attention to your voice as
Yes,
you do.
yes.
Keeping in mind, if you would feel intimidated by your spouse coming to you, they probably do too.
Absolutely.
So keeping your voice friendly,
Yes.
keeping statements that you say, refraining from saying, you this, you made me feel this, you did this.
Yes.
Instead
Fault.
say, I feel like, I would like it if you would. I've been dealing with.
And make it a conversation.
Yes.
Not statements.
Yes.
I found that this happens to me when this happens. Does that make sense?
Ask questions.
Yeah. When this thing happened, I assumed that you were saying blah, and I realized that I don't know that that's what you actually meant.
Yes.
What did you mean when that thing happened? When you said that thing, when we were at dinner and you made that comment? What did you actually mean by it? And then you start to learn because you're getting their actual point of view, not the assumed point of view that you had put on them.
And one of the things I think that has been so beneficial to us in that is that we will repeat back to each other.
Yeah.
So, because we speak very different languages, we come from the same place, but our words are so
Everybody's
different.
nodding.
Yes. And so when you instead, when you take a breath and you say, okay, what I heard you say is
Yes.
such and such, don't be surprised.
Put it in your words.
Put it in your words,
Yes.
yes. Don't be surprised when they say, what? That's not what I just said.
You completely missed the point. Like, completely. And it's like, that's the, like, specifically, I have said, so you're saying da-da-da-da. And I literally thought, I just went, so you're saying
That's so
da-da-da-da.
clear.
She was going to say yes, and we were going to move on. I mean, it was a fact. And she just went, not even close. And I just went, wait. There was literally no other way to take the words you said and have any other point. And she made me see there was an entirely different world that you can pull from the exact same words that had totally different meanings to me.
Yes, exactly.
Totally different.
So have patience with each other, especially if this is new in your relationship.
Yes.
Have patience, and maybe if you're going to assume anything, assume that they are coming from a place of caring about you.
Yeah, there you go.
Have that assumption in the background.
That's a good assumption. Use that one assumption.
And everything else, ask questions. And
Yes.
don't get upset when they ask you questions.
Yes.
I think sometimes people will get so offended and feel like, how could they ask
They get
me?
scared.
How could they think
Yeah,
that?
you get scared and you start feeling attacked because you're worried. Your insecurities come forward.
Yes.
The fear comes forward. Wait, they're questioning if I'm okay, and they're questioning if I screwed up, or they're questioning was I being aggressive, and that's where you have to keep the tone, the emotional level,
Yes.
at a caring conversation, not making statements, not attacks, not anything short of a pleasant, nice conversation. And you have to sometimes reel yourself back in because you will go there. You will emotionally react.
And sometimes what can help is to do something physical to bring the contact back in. If you're starting to feel like you feel separated, you feel like you're not being heard, not in a violent way, but perhaps you might say, I feel like you're misunderstanding. Can I hold your hand? And
Yes.
then when you make that contact, it's going to make signals go into your brain, into their brain.
It does.
That feel good.
Yeah, it calms
and
down.
It calms you down. You're no longer on an island and separate.
Yeah, it's separated. Yes.
Yeah.
You're in it together.
Yeah. And even pausing pausing those conversations sometimes and saying, look, I know this is really hard to talk about right now, but remember how much I love you.
Yeah, and sometimes, and if it gets to the point where it gets tense, go, okay, we've learned something, we've had a conversation,
later.
we've had some time, let's pause.
Yes.
Do something nice, have an ice cream together or something.
Yes.
Let the conversation go. And just be, just talk about what's going to be happening later that day or whatever. Let that conversation go and just take a breath and go back to just being okay and happy.
And that is such a big lesson. I feel like we're detouring a little bit here, but you hit on something that is so critical as you go through each of these different agreements, especially in talking with somebody else. It doesn't have to be a huge emotional chaos, drama, or emotional thing afterwards. You might feel some tension as you're talking, but if you can learn how to shift that switch in your brain, that will make so many things in your whole life flow with greater ease, not getting stuck in the harder emotions, which is exactly that. If it starts to get too tense, pausing and saying, you know what, we've made some progress here. Yes. Let's just go have some fun. And I think sometimes people don't know, they've never been introduced to that concept.
The stopping.
They've been introduced to, if you get in an argument or something is tough, you just keep going, and for hours after you've separated, you just stew and your brain never stops.
It's to discuss a topic
that is hard.
It has to be, a lot of people, they feel like we have to start, middle, finish, everything that goes with it. It has to come to a conclusion, the whole thing. But that's not how life is.
It doesn't.
And it doesn't help. And usually by the end of it, there's tension, if not anger.
Yes.
And that doesn't move you towards completing something. that moves you towards not wanting to ever deal with that thing again.
Exactly. And then that ends up turning into resentment. If you
Yep.
separate after a conversation and your mind is spinning, or you see them wandering off and you can feel the smoke coming from their head as their brain is stewing and thinking on these things, that is not where you want to end this. You want to end this and say, look, let's let this go for now, because it's going to feel really hard. If you've never done that, it's going to feel so hard.
To let
You're
go.
going to feel like saying, look, it may work for some people, but I can't shut my brain off.
I can't let it go.
I can't do that. But you can. It's hard to start training.
It
So
is.
you might have a specific thing. When you start feeling that, go, you know what? Let's stop for now. Let's have a bowl of ice cream and let's enjoy every single morsel of flavor in every bite.
You find ways
and
to
you
focus.
start to shift that into releasing the dopamine in your brain, and it starts to bring you back into being able to express differences of opinion,
opinions, yeah.
being able to express things you had assumed and found out they're not correct, and then shifting into good very quickly.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I think is really good with any kind of a tough conversation. Learn how to shift your brain, even if it's not with another person. When you start going into those emotional states, learning how to pull yourself out. Sometimes people feel like if you show how upset you are, if you show how depressed you are,
You
if
dive
you show
into the emotion.
how much it is overwhelming, it's almost as though they're trying to show that they stir enough chaos to prove they care. But that does not do any good for anybody. And there's an assumption behind that the person feels like, if I show this, they're going to see that I care. They're going to see how important this is to me. And that's not usually how the other person perceives it at all.
You assume that at your deepest core, you assume that that person will understand, I care so much, I'm going to put all of this emotion behind it. But the reflection of that, what the person sees is they're so blocked off. They're so consumed with the way they see it. It's about them and not me is what the person is seeing that you're talking to.
And there can be a lot of ways.
And there's
there's
so many aspects of the assumptions.
It's rarely what the person is trying to portray.
Exactly.
So learning how to reel that in, that's one of the first steps of training yourself to not create chaos in your life. So often on a daily basis, people create this chaos and they're living their life asleep. They're dreaming reality through an unconscious mind instead of a conscious mind.
So I think working on the assumptions of what you believe in yourself, I personally think that is more important. Yes, we have a tendency to assume about other people, but that is the one that I find the least important. The most important part is finding out who are you for real, and don't assume anything.
Yes.
Just because you have believed it to be true, whether it's you're 10 years old or you're 60 years old or you're whatever, just because you've assumed that your whole life, it doesn't make it true. Has it been tested? Have you seen that to be absolutely true, whatever it is? Am I actually that way? Do I actually believe that? If I'm put in that situation, will I react like I think I will every single time? Because if not, then you've made assumptions based on, I would like to see myself like this. I think that would be a good person. That would make me a good person. So I'll assume that's how I am. But that's not necessarily who you are.
Exactly. And the best way to keep yourself from making assumptions, just as you said, start with yourself. So how do you do that? Asking questions. Once you start asking questions, ask clarifying questions. If you still don't understand or you're still not certain exactly, ask more questions. And eventually you're going to get to a point where you feel like you have a true understanding of who you are, not just what others perceive of you or what you were raised to kind of feel like who you are. Sometimes as we're raised, there are certain boxes we end up putting ourselves in based on the environment we're around. It doesn't mean that's who you really are or what the light of your soul is. Asking lots of questions. And then as you're going through that, asking of yourself, then also doing that with others. Whenever there's anything you don't understand, ask questions to clarify it. One of the most dangerous things if you don't understand something is to try to just figure it out yourself if it involves somebody else.
Assume that in the end, I'll figure it out and be correct.
And instead, ask questions. And on that same end, don't get upset when others ask you questions as well.
Yeah.
I was always raised to believe that there is no bad question ever. And I'm a firm believer in that. And it's gotten me in trouble a couple times because sometimes people will feel like they don't want to be asked.
They don't want to be questioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, don't question me. I know why I'm doing it. You just leave it alone.
Exactly. But we have to also be okay with whatever somebody else's response is too, or whatever their reaction is. We are not responsible for the reaction, but we are responsible for how we respond ourselves.
And finding the information.
Exactly, which is, as we've talked about many times, inserting the pause, not making assumptions, not getting mad at others, and knowing that everyone else has a right to really ask you anything.
Yeah.
And it's up to you what you want to answer, or if you want to say, I'd prefer not to answer that.
Yeah.
They have a right to ask just as much as you have a right to whatever answer you want to give.
Yeah.
And in that same way, you have a right to ask plenty of questions. And if we could create this clear communication with everyone, imagine if every human being was capable and chose to not only have clear communication, but see through that, see the light of their soul, see the love that is in themselves. That would automatically clear us away from making assumptions about ourselves and clear us from making assumptions about others. And then through that, being impeccable with our word, really recognizing how to be impeccable with our word, how to not make assumptions with anything, and through that great clear communication coming from love, there would no longer be any wars. There would be no miscommunication. There would be no feeling of separation, which is often where violence comes from. It would automatically clear those. We can't be responsible for changing everyone else in the world, but we can be responsible for ourselves. And what we do when we change ourselves, it causes a rippling effect that automatically starts to change others around us. Exactly. Becoming aware of every single time that you make assumptions, that's step one for this week. Become aware of it. See it. Recognize it. When you do it, stop.
Try to stop.
Try to stop. Try to stop.
Do your best. That's all we can ask.
Take action by asking questions.
Yes. Getting
clarity. Noticing, did you overestimate your day? Did you underestimate your ability?
Yes.
What in this video, honestly, I would recommend you watch probably 2 or 3 times, because each time you watch it, you're going to be picking up several different things, and they will layer together. Ask questions, clarify, make this a very active habit in your life, and you'll find so much more joy. You'll discover you are capable of so much more than you even realize. Your relationships are going to be in so much more harmony, finding compatibility, being able to have the hard conversations, and being able to, if you're one of the types that feels like your life is in chaos oftentimes or in hyper emotion oftentimes, this is a key to unlocking that, letting that ball of chaos wash away, letting those heightened emotions calm down as you find the light of your soul, simply by no longer making assumptions about yourself or anyone else around you.
Absolutely.
And as JJ mentioned, starting with yourself, of course.
Always. That's the best place to start.
Truly, definitely recommend you watch this video 2 or 3 times. If you're able to, watch this once a day for a week, and each day choose something from it that you will implement, a way that you're going to bring the questions in, bring the pause in, maybe certain days focusing on yourself. You'll be surprised at how many assumptions you make about yourself, and certain days make it about specific relationships.
Or
one
you
by
can do
one.
like once a week and then write down something and like put it on your mirror. So in the mornings when you start your day, you go, oh, that's what I'm trying to work on today. And that way it gives you some
Integration.
time to integrate that, once a week is a nice time to just try one new task.
Yeah, very good. Very good point. Yes, because it does take that time to make a habit. If you did that for 3 weeks, then you've got 21 days, which means you're making a pretty good habit out of that at that point.
Exactly. And don't forget to go to our website.
earthandskycenter.com. And like our Facebook page, subscribe to us on YouTube, and please share this video out. You might even want to watch this with your significant other or a close friend, and this could be your conversation starter.
A conversation starter, exactly.
Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye.